thanks for having me round, much appreciated. It's been a while. What are you doing with yourself?
I'm now being a father, and I deliver boiler parts for APP, which is a massive plumbing merchants.
In terms of being a retired fighter, so many people have struggled in retirement. Has it been a battle for you?
Up and down really, but I wouldn't say so much that's the retirement of like boxing. I think it's life in general. Do you know what I mean? Life's hard anyway, and if you haven't, when you're on a struggle, having to go to work every day and support a family and things like that, just normal things become hard work. Do you know what I mean? That's just everyday life. But no, I haven't really been one of those to suffer, if I'm honest. I don't think. I've had little bouts of a bit of depression, missing it, being centre of attention and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say I've suffered too bad, no.
Portsmouth had a few good fighters over the years, but it's not known to be a boxing hotbed as such. How did you get started in the first place?
How did I start boxing? Well, my older brother, I've got an older brother called Nicky. He used to box for Lee Park because we're a little council estate outside of Portsmouth, and obviously every little brother wants to do what big brother does. So I went to the local boxing gym. Well, actually my mum took me because my brother wouldn't, and it just went from there. And my brother's best friend was Chris Bessie at the time. So, and if you have a look at his amateur record,
yeah, of course. Well, you fought in the same ABA finals,
yeah,
a couple of times.
You're never going to get anyone equal his record. I think he won 6 ABA totals. That's not unheard of.
Were you good from the start?
No. I was a little fat kid, you know, and I was always boxing people that was a lot taller than me. So I didn't get a lot of decisions that I felt that I deserved, because it just didn't look right. We're literally talking, I'll be like there and they'd be there as a youngster. So I would say my junior record would have been round about 50-50. Say like I had 40 odd, you know, won 20, lost 20.
But you must have enjoyed it because you started with it.
Yeah, loved it. Bruce Lee was my hero. And then one of my first boxing memories was Frank Bruno when he boxed Bone Crusher Smith, and when Tyson beat Burbick. That's when I started looking at TV, and they started to become my heroes, like Bruce Lee was.
And you said your mum took you to the gym?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Often someone's dad takes them to the gym.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really lucky where the dad was concerned. My mum and dad split up when I was 1, and I was raised by a stepdad who was a lovely man, God bless him. He's passed away, but my mum has been like a mum and a dad. Do you know what I mean? She's very, very old school, quite an hard woman, as in her mentality and that, you know. And because my brother wouldn't take me, she took me.
So she wasn't conflicted about taking you. She thought it was for your own good.
I think because obviously my mum was born just like after the war, and that, so men were supposed to be a bit tough, and do you know what I mean? So I think she accepted that, and because my brother done it, and my dad used to do it years ago, but like in the fairgrounds, he used to,
in the booths and that.
Yeah, he used to be like one of them that used to, if you last a certain amount of rounds or something, and there used to be like a fun fair down at Southsea called Billy Manning's Fair or something, and my dad used to be like a minder for him, so they tell me.
Did you ever find your dad in the end?
No. I knew my dad, but him and my mum split up when I was young. Back then, I don't think dads really played a massive part when they split with their partners. And that I knew him. He passed away when I was about 15, but they split up when I was 1. But he wasn't really in my life as such.
Seen here very briefly, you're quite a hands-on dad. So you learn as you go along. I suppose you've learned maybe from his mistakes over the years.
Yeah, totally. That was always played on my mind. Like even when I was boxing, like especially when I lived in London most of the time, I'd come home weekends and I would have my kids and things like that. That's always played a massive part on me, because I think that every kid needs a mum and a dad.
Did you learn a trade when you were younger?
No, not really. If I'm honest, I was one of them that I sort of fell into boxing again, because I give up boxing I started when I was 11, and I give up when I was about 15, and then come to about 17 sort of age, started going out, started, you know, mixing with girls, going to pubs, and I sort of got into a few scraps. And my brother, who was boxing, and he was one of the coaches at Lee Park, he convinced me to go back into boxing. 1, because I was winning all the scraps, and 2, he didn't want to see me get into trouble. I'm a typical case that if I never got back into boxing, I would have ended up in a lot of trouble, more than likely prison, you know what I mean, if not worse.
How, you know, you said that you were a short and stumpy guy as a kid. Did you always have an engine on you?
Yeah, that was weird. Like with football and running, I was always one of that. I was never the fastest, but I would continue. I would
get up and down the pitch.
I would go and go. With a game of football, I wasn't the best, but I would go after the ball constantly. I was always in defence, and I would constantly run after the ball. I was always fit, but I was never like the fastest. But my actual fitness levels, as in stamina wise, it's always been good. Even with swimming, I'm a fantastic swimmer. Wayne Elcock ain't too good though, to be fair. Who we was talking about earlier.
You mentioned obviously your junior record. You got to 3 consecutive ABA finals.
As a senior.
Yeah.
I went back to boxing, started really enjoying it, lost a bit of weight, and I had 2 fights. One against Winston Penfold, and that was a bit up and down. I got caught. I think I got dropped, if I'm honest. And then I got up, and I'll give him a standing count. It was a really little tough. Anyway, I won it on points. And then my second one was someone called Foley, I think it was. But he was quite highly ranked as a heavyweight.
Right.
He was like, you know, in the top 10 or say the top 15. I'm not 100% sure. So I sat down with my brother and my old amateur coach, Jeff Weston, and we was talking about the ABAs. Well, I weighed around about 84, 85. I'm still quite fat, if I'm honest. You know, chubby and all that. And we decided we was going to try the ABAs, and we're going to go in under 81s. I left the gym on and this is just me being honest, I left the gym on the Thursday, and I was under 81 kilos. Me being young and being a bit of a tearaway and things like that, I actually went out with my mates on the Friday night. When I weighed in for the ABAs on the Saturday, I think I weighed about 84 kilos. And I tried to talk them into letting me box at heavyweight, because I was one of them. I was never scared of anyone, you know, and it's boxing, it's a sport. I was never ever scared. And I remember there was a fella called John McCormack, I think it was, not Kev, Big Kev. I think it was John McCormack, was saying he'd won the Southern Counties a few years. Well, when I got drawn against him, my brother Nicky went, being a typical big brother, you're not fighting him, you're not going into heavyweight. And then I convinced my brother, I said, listen, Nick, I've trained hard, I know I've mucked up a little bit on the weight, I said, which is, you know, it's my stupid fault, hold my hands up, but I really want to do this for the experience. What can happen? You're in my corner, you know. I went in it. Now everyone laughed when we went to the centre of the ring. I've gone like that, and second round, bang, I've knocked him out. And it just went from there, and it just sort of like that they accept, because I was so small, but I had a massive engine. Yeah. And even as like an amateur, I would non-stop throwing punches. My jab was brilliant. I would non-stop throwing punches, and because these big heavyweights, they're used to hitting people and them going over. Well, they would hit me, and I'd laugh at them.
Where did the jab come from?
My jab's always been good, but Ronnie Davis made it what it ended up being. I would jab to come in and I'd throw, but Ronnie made me realise just how important that jab was. So
96 amateur or ABA finals, you beat Patrick Lewis.
Yeah.
That was in a year when Jawi Khalik and Scott Dan also featured. Yeah. It's quite good when you look through these years where you feature and you look at the other guys that were active at the time. It shows how the high regard that the ABAs had, certainly at the time. A year later, 97, you lost to Pinehurst Blue Stevens.
Yep. Again, there is a little story behind that. If better man won on the night, but again, I tried to do what I'd done the first year, and that was being a little bit disrespectful towards the discipline side of boxing, if I'm honest.
Was this where you went out the night before?
Yep. and it showed. Yeah. You know, my fitness levels was always through the roof.
So why did you go out the night before? Because you enjoyed it, or because you thought you could, or both?
Yeah, you're dumb, aren't you? You know, and because I got away with it the first year, and that's not disrespect to none of my opponents. It's not. It's just that I did. Yeah. And until you learn it, something happens to make you think, it's like trying to teach your boy to move out the way of a left hook. But until he gets hit with that one of the left hooks, he's not going to move. He's not going to put his hand up. Yeah. It's just I'm not going to learn by you telling me. I'm going to learn by my own mistakes. So I did, and it happened, and it ate away at me, and I swore that would never happen again. And if I'm honest, the following year, when I won it again the following year, not the whole time.
Yeah, you beat Mark Query in the final.
Yeah.
Just in '97, also in the finals were Chris Bessy, Audley, Ricky Hatton, Steve Bell and Ian Napper. You and Ricky actually have become good mates, haven't you,
really
over
good.
the years?
Yeah, we have, yeah.
It was one of those strange friendships I found out about years ago, that you were actually really good mates.
Yeah, we are, yeah. Yeah, you know, it saddens me sometimes to hear how much he struggles with like the retirement side of things, but then you got to think he was #1 in Britain as the best loved young man. He was down to earth, centre of attention, and look who he lost to: Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. Forget the last one. How he ever expected himself to come out of retirement and be in the shape that he was before he started training, to then go on, because the man was well classed. The man he fought, I think he only lost once at the time.
Sinchenko,
Yeah, do you know what I mean? He really did ask himself of a lot, but to have only lost to the two best pound for pounds of our generation, because Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather both deserve that accolade, but to have only lost to them, that's some achievement.
Well, I think the good thing about the Sinchenko fight is that's the only fight really that he's had that he's lost that's given him any kind of peace of mind.
Yeah, but some of the nights we had watching him, honestly, they are, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, they are just as good of memories as some of my total fights that I've had. Honestly, Mayweather, the weigh-in was unreal.
You go over there?
Yeah, I was there. Can't really remember too much about the fight, if I'm honest. But the weigh-in was as good as most fights I've been to. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There was thousands of us.
In '98, when you beat Mark Query in the ABA final, Chris Bessy beat Froch.
Yeah.
There was again
I
Audley.
do believe he's the last Englishman to beat Froch, if I'm correct.
Quite possibly, yeah. Froch, Audley, Courtney Fry, Dave Walker, Michael Hunter and Nigel Wright were all there. Did you get many international opportunities?
Small for heavyweight, wasn't I? That way of boxing, pick away, it's not really... I boxed against Scotland, Willie Kane, I think his name was. Right. I boxed him, I beat him. I'll tell you, I boxed Calvin Brock. Yeah,
that was my next question. When you fought him, he would later fight Vladimir Klitschko, obviously.
During the fight, I kid you not, Ian Irwin and my brother, back in them days, I don't know what it's like now, but back in them days, your old amateur coach was allowed to hand up to Ian Irwin, right? And my brother was handing up. At the beginning of the fight, he got a lead. By the end of the fight, Ian Irwin actually said to my brother, I don't know whether Tony's got this or not, because we had a proper little tear up. And again, the photograph, you got him like that, and this little fat kid, little black eye there.
Audley and Fry obviously went to the Sydney Games in 2000. Was that on your radar at all?
No, unless I had lost weight and gone down to light heavy, I knew, possibly even middleweight, if I'm honest, I wouldn't have got my opportunities. I represented my country, and I'm very, very proud to be able to say that. I think I've done it 3 times, won one, lost one, and another one was a no contest, and that was it. That was only 3 times I boxed for England.
So could you have not busted a gut and got down a weight? Did you not? Or did
I could. Yeah, I always loved my food. Honestly, I did.
Was that it?
Oh, I swear to God, I always used to love my food.
So with hindsight, do you regret not doing that?
I'm quite happy with what I did. Yeah, I suppose I could have done, lost the weight, but then the amount of stories I used to hear Chris Bessy used to have to go through to make weight, the amount of stories that I hear Martin Power, Matthew Marsh, the stories that they did to make weight, I never, ever, ever had to diet, ever.
You turned pro with Frank Maloney on a Billy Schwer bill in London. You beat Smokey Henderson. What was your debut like?
Nerve-wracking, isn't it? It's all new. Well, obviously, it's no longer fun. As an amateur boxer, for me, it was about the laugh, it was about the fight, and it was fun. So I could eat what I wanted, and I just loved to fight. When you turn pro, it's a different ball game. You know, even when you're sparring journeyman, they're beating you up, and you're ABA champion. You know, it really is. I remember first time I sparred Gilbert Eastman. He was only a welterweight, I think he was. Right, he beat me up. Do you know what I mean? And you're coming, and we're talking, he was what, 11.5 stone or 11 stone at the time. I might not have been at the beginning the most disciplined, but every single one of my trainers will tell you I trained like an absolute Trojan. Well, I did, and the weight fell off me. When I was training with Mark Rowe, at the beginning. Obviously, it then becomes sort of a fallacy with Frank Maloney and my uncle Frank Hopkins. Get Tony down, get Tony down, get Tony down. And I think at the Lennox Lewis College, I think the lowest I got myself down to was about 11:10, 11:11. And that, but again, I wasn't really happy because I love my food.
Yeah.
And that, you know, so I think if you look at the weight, I'm not sure, but I think the weight weren't far off 12 stone for that fight.
You mentioned Gilbert Eastman. Tell me about Eastman.
Oh, do you know what? I owe Howard Eastman a great debt, because without him, I'm not 100% sure I would have gone on to have done what I've done. But the fights, he's the hardest man I've ever faced in the ring, and that's saying something when you look at some of the people that I've fought. He is, because on a daily basis, I'd get in my uncle's car in Portsmouth, because my uncle used to drive me all the time because he knew I'd be going about war. And I'm thinking, 2.5 hours later, I got a fight for my life. He really was that good.
You won a few 4-rounders at York Hall and Elephant and Castle, then fought Martin Jolly over 6.
Yeah.
That was the first time stepping up to 6-rounders. I'm guessing, obviously, having touched upon what we've already said about fitness, is stepping up from 4 to 6 no problem?
No, never a problem. Going up in roundage was never a problem. Mentally, I think boxers make it a bigger deal than what it actually is, but then we're little kids. And that's why we look at our trainers for a little bit of reassurance. You know, you need someone who's been there, watched you, to say you're fine.
A couple of fights later, you fought Nathan King, who was making his debut at the time. So a bit of a short straw, really, because Nathan King could handle himself, and certainly became more experienced. You guys fought later on, because he became a bit of a gatekeeper, didn't he?
Well, I think, I'll tell you what happened with Nathan King, if I'm honest. I think, reading in between the lines, he was Joe Calzaghe's sparring partner, right? And he'd won loads of Welsh amateur titles. And where he'd been doing really well, and he's sparring with Joe Calzaghe, they felt confident. They offered him to it, but I wasn't really going to be winning anything, because I was like, I think it was 6-0, 7-0, something like that. And I'm fighting a debut boy. I was on an island to nothing, because I had to beat him, because what was the double ABA champion losing to a debut boy, you know? Or when I did beat him, well, he should have done it. It was his debut, you know. I was on a hiding to nothing. That was actually Frank Hopkins that actually made that fight, because Ronnie wasn't too happy about having that fight. I don't know what Ronnie would say now, but he wasn't too happy for that reason, because Ronnie's he's very switched on when it comes to boxing, as he's a manager and a trainer. So he was very, well, why was he fighting him? Don't seem
what's to gain.
Yeah. But I think what it was, where Maloney and Warren had that sort of partnership where they was sort of together for Scott. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Because he work with him for a little bit, didn't he? And so he just threw me in against him. And that, apparently, according to Ronnie Davis, was where he said, that's when I realised that you was going to be a champion. Because he said, I can't even remember what round, he said, you got caught with a shot. He said, and you just shook your head and just carried on. He said, you sort of like laughed. He said, and that then told me, because Ronnie always says that, you can't judge a boxer till he's been in the trenches. Yeah.
Then in your next fight came Butch Leslie. That was over 10, so I guess that's where you're going in terms of having the stamina to go 10 rounds. Well, Southern area title as well. Yeah,
it was with Butch. It was very intimidating. You know, he was ripped. He was absolutely ripped, and it was a bit of a boy outside the ring as well, from what I can gather. And I'll never forget the weigh-in. We was at the weigh-in, and he's like, "Whoa," and all that. Like, well, I'm just happy-go-lucky. You know, nothing phases me. And Ronnie, I remember he tried to get on the scales, and he was, I think, I don't know, a couple of ounces over his pants. And Ronnie said to him, I want his pants off. I want him under the weight. And I was looking at Ronnie, and I want him to get under the weight. He's gone like that, right? So he's made him take his pants off. When we've later got in the car to go and have something to eat, I said, Ron, why did you do that? He went, I wanted to rattle him. He said, I knew he was under, we're taking his pants off. He said, but I wanted to rattle him to let him know. And in that fight was when I realised with the stamina and your second wind, right? And then it was in that fight, I think it was in about rounds, I don't know, 6, something like, yeah, it was about 6. And I told Ronnie, Ron, I'm actually knackered. No, you're not, Tone. No, Ron, I am. And he went, Tone, don't worry, go out there. And if you look, like on the video of the thing, Butch Leslie only comes at me and I start laughing at him, and then I start upping it again, upping it again, upping it again. That's when I realised I know what they mean by second wind.
Well, you went one better than that in your next fight. You won the Commonwealth title.
Yeah, I think that was at short notice, if I remember rightly.
You beat Hastings Rosani, stopping him in the 10th. What were you thinking here? By the time Southern Area Champion, Commonwealth Champion, what did you think was the end goal?
I never believed in my ability as much as what Ronnie used to and my Uncle Frank used to. I never for a million years thought I'd ever go on to be a world champion or be ranked in the world's top 10 or anything like that. But after the Butch Leslie fight, I knew I was better than average. When I was first training, I went into the ABAs. I didn't want to be Southern Area champion. I never looked at an ABA champion, and the same with boxing. I didn't want to be Southern Area champion. But when I beat Butch Leslie, I thought everything else now is a bonus. And then when I beat Hastings Rosani, if I remember rightly, the fight before, he had Neil Simpson in all sorts of trouble, up and down. I think it was 5 times. I was in no bother with Hastings Rosani, none at all. None of his punches seemed to affect me, and I think I won it quite comfortably. After that fight, it was sort of like, where are we going to go from here? How far are we actually going to go?
Well, what was interesting was after that fight, you said, I'm only really a super middleweight.
Yeah.
Was that ever a serious option and consideration for you? Did you think that you were going to be a career super middleweight at some point, or had you sort of thought, I'm just going to sit at 175 pounds?
That was Ronnie's decision.
What, to stay or to go
stay?
Down? Right.
That was Ronnie's decision, 100%. And after, as I say, after the Butch Leslie fight, I had every faith in what Ronnie was saying. And he said to me, you're a happy fighter, Tone. Again, because I like my food, you know? And because I made light heavyweight so comfortable, and I never weight drained, and because my endurance was through the roof.
You had plenty in the tank.
Yeah, I had plenty. You know, I could have made super middleweight 100%. No problem.
You might have been taking something out of what you had, what made you
Well,
good.
I wasn't a concussive puncher. You're taking away my endurance and all the rest of it. You might have took that away from me.
You said about your food a fair bit. What's your favourite? Or what has been your favourite? What's your poison?
I'm not, do you know what? I'm not really a sweet tooth person, but I just like general like roast. Oh, right, if you see it, I could get you my plate now, you'd laugh. On a Sunday, my roast, it's like a tray. Honestly, it really is.
A couple more fights, then you won the vacant WBU title against Konstantin Shvets. What did the WBU title mean to you?
At the time, you know, bearing in mind, Ricky Hatton was WBU champion at the time.
And packing out the MEN.
Yeah, and it was very well recognised back then. In a big world of scheme of things, if someone plays football, they want to play football on TV, they want to be in the Premiership, they want, you know, when you do boxing, back then it was only I wanted to be an ABA champion if I was ever going to do it. I never, for a million years, ever thought I'd ever turn professional and do it for a living. No, I never. But even so, your ultimate aim would be to be a world champion. So to fight for a world title, and as I say, at the time, Ricky Hatton was WBU champion. Yeah. You know, so it was recognised. And so, yeah, it meant everything, and that's Fetz. I think the fight before me, he knocked out someone called Darren Ashton. Well, back in the day, Darren Ashton never really got knocked out. So I knew I was in for a bit of a row, do you know what I mean? But again, jab, boxing, outboxing him, keeping him at distance. You then had a hard fight with Chris Davis. Oh, brilliant. One of the hardest fights I've had. Really was. He really was. Become friends again after. It's typical boxing. And I remember one time he hit me, I was this side of the ring, and before I knew it was that side of the ring, and I had absolutely no clue. You watch on TV, I had absolutely no clue how I got there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that was, I would say, he was, at the time, bearing in mind I was in my peak then, I would say, or I was near my peak. Okay. He was one of my hardest fights that I've ever had. Then came the Neil Simpson fight, which was a big fight at home in Portsmouth. How big was that for you, the Simpson fight? Massive, wasn't it? Because a lot of my fans were Pompey fans. You know, I'll become very well associated with the Pompey fans as they become associated with me. So it grew from there. Well, obviously Coventry and Pompey, they was both in the same league then. So it became a bit of a football thing as much as it did boxing. Ronnie was training you, obviously, and he said Simpson actually used to spar Eubank, so he knew him well. Yeah, he did, yeah. So he'd had him well scouted for him. Well, because obviously similar, light heavyweight with Eubanks, obviously being a super middleweight and a middleweight, he would spar a lot of light heavyweights and things like that. And Ronnie always said that I'd outwork him.
He was, though, Ronnie, as he is, quite outspoken afterwards, saying that you didn't box to orders and stuff like that.
No, again, sometimes your heart rules your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, does that sort of criticism bother you? But if you agreed with it, I guess
yeah. Listen, at the end, the thing that sometimes I think with these days, see, I'm quite old-fashioned. If you're going to train yourself and you're that great, why are you employing a trainer?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to have 100% belief in your trainer. So if your trainer's telling you you're good, you're good. If your trainer's telling you you're bad, you're bad. Why else are you paying him? Do you know? So if Ronnie says that I didn't box too clever, then I didn't box too clever.
You've got to sort it out, yeah. You were down twice for the first time in your career against 11-0 Andre Carsten, is that right?
Andre Carsten, yeah.
Yeah. What was and how much trouble were you in?
If I remember rightly, I got the phone call about the Andre Carsten fight, and Ronnie will tell you a story about this, and it was only about 4 or 5 weeks away, 4.5 weeks away, and I was actually on holiday at the time when I got the phone call to say, do you want to fight Andre Carsten, who I had watched beat Butch Leslie not so long before, again, who I'd had a real hard fight with. And I rang Ronnie up, and Ronnie said, right, just start running. I was still on holiday at the time. Start running. He said, don't eat too much, obviously don't drink or anything like that. He said, and just get yourself ready for when you come back, and then you're living with me. And that's when I went and lived with Ronnie, and he put a lot of sprints in my training regime, like my running. It was sprint, because it got my fitness up very, very quick. I don't actually look at the Andre Carsten fight as one of my hardest fights, not at all. It's just the fact that I got caught very early. I think it was with a left hook, and right on the top of your head, and it robs you of your senses. Do you know what I mean? But again, because of my fitness and because of all the sprints that me and Ronnie had been doing, and I'd lived at his house. God, he loves cooking your leeks. But yeah, and we got through it. And, you know, and again, I trusted him because he told me, because obviously my first reaction was, I ain't gonna be fit enough, Ron. Tone, listen to me. You're one of them old time fighters that I can get you ready in the space of 6 weeks or something like that. He said, we do it.
And then there was this this grudge match. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You had a good win over Neil Linford. Boxing News billed it as a grudge match between stablemates. You sparred about 100 rounds with him, it said.
No, more than that.
Was it?
A lot more than that.
So Boxing News said you'd split with Ronnie following, in inverted commas, a power struggle. He was training Linford and said he'd corner you and pick up with Linford afterwards, but you wanted him to yourself after that.
I'm quite a man of my word, yeah? And when me and Neil Linford used to train together, again, we're friends now, you know, so I'm not bad-mouthing him or anything like that, but we had an agreement that because of all the training that we've done with each other, and he said in one of the press conferences, I feel that I've helped Tony win the world title or anything. Yes, he did, because of all the sparring we've done. But we had an agreement that no matter what, we wouldn't fight each other, because I didn't want that in the camp. And obviously I know what Ronnie's like, and you know, he's very soft, and I know he gets on really well with Neil, even now he still do. And there was a comment made in the front room that you was in today, and it was along the sort of lines of, don't beat him too bad or anything like, as if to say he didn't want me to hurt him or anything, as you say, because wanting him after.
Yeah, well, yeah, you said something like you thought he was hedging his bets.
Yeah.
So kind of the story in Boxing News was that you used to promoters thinking, well, I might promote him and him, but I'll walk out with the winner.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you thought with Ronnie.
And no matter what Ronnie says, that was what he was implying. But I don't think he was implying it like with Don King. Walk in with the winner, walk out with the winner, no matter who loses.
It's a little bit malicious.
Yeah, it's malicious. Ronnie hasn't got a malicious bone in his body. But what he does, at the time, which he does now, I'm sure he does, at the time you're talking about my world title. You're talking about my
livelihood.
Livelihood. They're all pronouncing of me, Tony Oakey, world champion. Neil Linford's trying to take that. Listen, train him after the fight, but don't mention it until after the fight. Because at this moment, we're training to beat him. And to come out and say anything like that, it got my back up, because obviously he had the nerves, because I know Neil Linford knew me from the sparring, same as I knew Neil Linford was going to cause me all the problems in the world up until the halfway mark. I knew that. But I knew if I get past the halfway mark, I would overtake him. And so I didn't need to hear about me taking it a little bit easy on him.
Ronnie threw you out of the house?
I'm very close to Ronnie, so I don't want to say anything that's going to cause an argument between us.
He said he threw you out of the house.
I think, it wasn't quite like that, but I think let's just say it was. It was
all tense and not.
It was a mutual agreement that I'll leave, and he agreed with me. I'm not going to badmouth Ronnie in any way.
By this time, you're now being promoted by Frank Warren, but trained by Frank Maloney.
Yeah.
Interesting switch, and obviously Frank Hopkins had input too. Then 2003, at home, you lost a split decision to Matthew Barney.
Yeah.
First defeat.
Right. Getting back to the Frank Maloney, my trainer, he trained me for that fight, and I will give him the credit, or her the credit, that they deserve. That is one of the best conditions I've ever been in my life. We went to Portugal, we trained. You cannot be around the champions like you've been around, like Frank or Kelly has, and not learn something. And he did. He got me in tip-top shape again, always sparring with Wayne Elcock. We always used to, and if you watched any of our spars, it was like fights all the time. We're best of friends, we really are. We always says we're like Rocky and Apollo, best of mates, but we knock lumps out of each other, and I was in tip-top shape for that. And I thank Frank Maloney for that, and of course my uncle Frank, but he was there from day one.
How satisfying was the Linford win then, given what had happened?
Obviously, like now we're friends. Like, we met at Ronnie's birthday do a while back, and I've texted Neil wishing him all the luck and everything over his partner with what she's going through at the moment. I've got nothing but love for Neil Linford, but it was a satisfaction as if to say I told you so, which, if you ask Ronnie the truth, he'd tell you the truth. Every spar was like a fight, but the halfway marker would overtake him. Then that's when I would pull away. Do you know what I mean? So I knew that that's what was going to happen. I actually remember, like now, I'd like to go out and say sorry to the dad, but I always actually remember looking out the ring in the second half of the fight, coming towards the end and winking at the dad and smiling as if to say, now it's starting. Do you know what I mean?
I mentioned that Barney fight. It was he came in at short notice, and he was a third opponent that you were going to fight. So you're going to fight Darren Corbett and then Robert Milovic. Did you know Barney before? Did you spar him or anything?
No,
like that?
I've never sparred Barney. Obviously, we're around the same sort of area, Pompey and Southampton. Not the best of mates, but we're from around the same sort of area. And I know him as well. He's a traveller, and I sort of like mix with the travellers a lot. I've been to Southall, I've been to Wickham, Wolves Fair, and that was an absolute. That whole show was jinxed from the word go. It really was. You had Darren Corbett, who you obviously know, who was a real tough nut. And I had trained non-stop the whole camp. I was fit for someone to stand there and have a toe-to-toe battle with me. I'm not blaming anyone, because the result and what happened after, as we know, it would have been a loss anyway. But how we went from Darren Corbett to Matthew Barney, who runs faster than Neil Linford Christie, I do not know. And I'm not slating Matthew, because he was good at what he done. He was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? He really was good at hitting and running. He was. But that ain't boxing to me.
So a few highlights from boxing news here. It was a night Portsmouth fans disgraced themselves.
But he played a massive part in that. I don't know whether you was there. Was you there?
No, I wasn't there.
Right. But he played a massive part in that, because he got the decision, and he was extremely to go. I'm old school. If you're going to go and face a champion in his hometown for his world title, surely you've got to go and take the title, right? He had blood coming from his back where he was on the ropes all the time. It was blood. So surely you've got to take the title.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? There's always the counter argument saying that, if a football team goes and parks the bus and wins 1-0. Have they,
But he edged on the fans. The fans had got, because you had the Pompey and the Southampton thing, but he was then, we always knew it was going to be a little bit like that with the Pompey and Southampton rivalry, right? We did know that. It was a massive gamble. I actually said I didn't want to fight Matthew Barney, right? I think Eric Timor was in the frame, and I said I'd rather fight him, because he edged on. He'd got the lucky decision. He had won the world title. Be happy with that. Then don't start edging on all the fans. And that's what he done, which obviously then they started a little bit of the violence.
Bob Mee said it was this is what you said about looking ugly, a split decision, sleep-inducing jab and grab performance.
Yeah.
It said Barney tried to leave the ring but was threatened and then had to take cover in the ring. And Bob said, this was about you. You were dreadful coming in on straight lines and tossing careless punches.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. But what you got to bear in mind, no excuse, world champion, you should be able to do everything. Ronnie would always teach you to be able to do a little bit of everything. Go forwards, go backwards, go side. And that was his favourite saying, always be prepared for everything. Yeah. But I had done a 12-week camp of just hammer and tongs, body bag, big heavy bags.
For Corbett.
For Corbett, to stand there and have an absolute war to then fighting Cinderella Man.
Did you want to fight him again?
Obviously, I did it first, but then over time, as my career's gone on, and no doubt we're getting into the second half of my career, as time's gone on, I can let that one go. I really can.
Because of how he was.
He was always going to make me look terrible. I went from being in fights of the year to the worst fight of the year, or worst fight of the decade.
After the fight, there was a positive drugs test.
Yes.
You were a party guy.
Yeah.
And you failed the drugs test. And then I remember at the time, because obviously you were a local hero, you got a lot of local press. Mm. And therefore the evening news and all the rest of it was filled with, or the news, Portsmouth news was filled with it. How tough was that period of time when you failed the test for cocaine and stuff?
Well, it's the metabolite of cocaine, which again, but it does show that it had gone through my system at some point. I actually found out about it all going in the press, if I'm honest, by the Sunday Daily Sun, I think it was, or the Sun. It was stupid. Didn't cheat. It was just a stupid mistake that I had made, and I paid the price. The actual test itself proved it was never taken at any time training for the fight or anything like that, because it was a metabolite of it, if whatever that's called, metabolite or whatever it's called. But I was just a young boy, stupid, made a mistake, and I paid the price.
So you literally said it was a fall from grace?
Yeah, as you can imagine, reading made the news of the world, won a world title, never made the news of the world, failed a drugs test, made the news of the world, do you know? But Oakey cokey, it was it was a tough time. Boxers ain't known for their brains, you know. We're known for our brawn, and you know, and especially a young boxer, you know, who's come from nothing, you know. So it was a mistake. It was a testing time. It really was. Got banned for a year, I think, because I went there and I was honest, and that they done it for, it was only 9 months, but for some reason Frank couldn't get me back out as quick as what he should have done.
What did you do for the 12 months? Obviously, there was no fighting. Were you did you stay in shape? Did you spar?
No, I had a lot of things going on in my private life that wasn't, you know, wasn't really like a memory I want to remember. I think I bought a truck and I went palleting with my brother, and we was doing that for the year. But God, I put on some weight, because you can imagine the training continuous has gone out the window, sitting in the truck, and I love my food.
What did you go up to?
I think in that I was, bearing in mind that you box at 12.5 stone, walk around at 13.5 stone maybe. I think I went up to about 15.5.
You came back and you stopped Davchian. Were you always going to come back? Was that, once you were out, did you think that you were going to come back, or was the stuff going on outside the ring that serious that you thought that you might not return?
No, yeah, I was always going to come back because I love fighting, and I couldn't leave it at that. You know, I've been from a young little fat kid who started boxing because his big brother boxed. You know, and then I'll give up boxing, as I say, when I was 15, and I'll come back and I won everything, and I was everyone's, because I was so honest, down to earth and all that lot, I was everyone's, everyone loved me. You know, I couldn't leave it at that. No, honestly, no, at no stage was I ever thinking I wasn't going to come back. It was just making sure I came back in the best. But that Davitan, he caught me during the fight, I can't remember what round it was, and my legs, I'd done a Michael Jackson dance, but then he was a tough nut. People don't realise he was quite a tough nut. I remember rightly, he beat Tony Dodson when Tony Dodson was in his prime.
You lost an English title fight to Peter Haymer. What was Peter like, certainly the first time round?
I never lost that fight. I never, do you know what, it still eats away at Peter. We've become really good mates. I went to a barbecue a couple of weeks ago where we all went up there. You know, we are really good friends. After I beat him the second time, he actually come and joined us so I've sparred him truckloads of rounds. You know, he's a real good kid.
Yeah, just so that people know, most people thought that you won, including, I think, Boxing News, but the referee was Grant Wallace, who scored it for Haymer.
Yeah, and I don't know, was I being punished still? I don't know. I don't really know Grant Wallace too well. To be, you know, again, I wouldn't want to slate anyone because I don't know the man. But from what I could gather, 95% of people thought I won it.
You had three more wins, then Nathan King again, and then a crowd-pleasing fight with Steve Spartacus for the British. That came a few weeks after you've been due to fight Peter Oboh, who live on Sky legged it.
Mate, it was incredible. I'm telling you now, I generally thought Jeremy Beadle was coming out of the dressing room. No one ever wanted to fight Peter Oboh. Everyone was scared of Peter. And I think at the time when you had to win the British title, you had to defend it twice to get it proved outright. They gave him outright because he couldn't get a challenger. I think he had one defence, right? He was one of the most feared boxers in British boxing. He could not get a challenger, right? So the little fat kid said, I will fight him because that's just the way I am, right? And I'll never forget it. Everything went perfect. And I'll never forget, we weighed in and we went in, had to do the stare down. Again, I'm looking up at him and laughing. And I could just see in his eyes that he was shocked that I did not look away. I was not fazed by him. And we are talking about a man that was feared. Like you must remember, could not get a challenger.
Yeah, sure. He was in many ways, it was like a fierce Matthew Barney.
Yeah.
Because not only could he make you look terrible, but he could hurt you as well.
Yeah, he could, yeah. He knocked out Ollie Clemenston. And at the time, if I remember rightly, Ollie Clemenston was...
He'd beaten Crawford Ashley, and
yeah,
knocked him out.
He was European champion. And I think he knocked him out. And so I was there. My head was 100% on the game. And we was in the dressing rooms. And I was gloved up. Everything was there. And they come in and said that he had said God had said, which is fine if he's a religious man. I don't know. I can't question that. I'm not. But that doesn't mean to say that it ain't real. But he didn't want to fight me, and I thought Jeremy Beadle was coming out here. If you remember, do you remember Jeremy Beadle?
Yeah.
I actually did think he was going to come out with a microphone and go like that with me, and no, it was true. And then I had to go and tell you. Got bearing in mind, I had sold. Back then, we're talking, that must be what, 10, 15 years ago. I had done something like 20, 30 grand tickets, I'm sure I did, on the David Hayes show. And I had to go and tell all my fans that and everyone knew that everyone was scared of Peter Oboh, so no one could believe that he'd never come out. And I don't for a second, whatever's gone on, whatever he is, he must be a religious man or whatever it is, he was not scared of me in any shape. Everyone's saying about him, he was not scared of me. Whatever it was, I do not know. But it was mad. And I remember going home on the minibus, getting home, and I think, to be fair, I did. I think I went out the next day, stuffed my face, drank myself silly. And then I think during the week, I got a phone call to say on a Mick Hennessy show, I think it was, right, yeah, that I could fight Steve Spartacus. Well, I knew obviously Steve, because we were sort of like the same sort of weight and all the rest of it, and I just jumped at the chance. And I think the frustration and that showed, because if you watch my jab in that fight, it was one of my best performances.
How tough, what is it like when because the Spartacus fight was a tough fight, it was an entertaining fight. What's it like when you're in there in the trenches, not just with Steve, but with anyone?
It is tough, but if you speak to people that's trained alongside me, when it's tough is when I used to be at my most comfortable. It's weird. It really is weird.
What activates the switch for you?
It goes in there. When I feel that they feel they're getting the better of me, I used to just be able to up the gear and just bite on the gum shield. And that was when I was at my most comfortableness. And that's what I think Steve Spartacus, if you watch it on TV, I'm almost positive. I think I stopped him in the last round, I think it was.
In the 11th.
Yeah. In the break, I'm sure Johnny Eames actually said to me, Tony, don't do nothing silly. Just go out there and jab now and just cruise to the victory. And I went out and stopped him. It was just everything on that night, everything come good. And also it put to bed in my head, I'd redeemed myself and I'd shown my true character and I'd came back and I proved all the doubt was wrong.
Were you still partying?
No, not as bad. I'd been there, done that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not going to lie and say I was become, teetotal. No, but the days of the silliness and the immatureness had sort of gone, it drifted away. But I would still have a celebrate, exactly the same as Hatton afterwards.
Did that ban change your outlook, or had you just matured naturally.
It made me realise that it could all be good. Because what you've got to understand is, at my age, I was in my 20s at the time, it could be over. You know, and it did. And another thing, money. When you're not earning money, sponsors gone. You're not earning no fight money. You know, and you're living like normal life, it goes away. You know, it's expensive life, isn't it?
Did you lose sponsors over the test?
Yeah, and rightfully so. They're sponsoring me to train, to fight. Well, I can't train and fight because I'm banned.
And to be the face of their company.
Yeah. Do you know, and rightfully so. So when it all come back, and I won it all again, it put it all to bed for me. And again, it's a life lesson.
It is one of those things, and it's a bit of a cliche, but did you find out who your friends were when that happened?
Yeah, of course you do. You always find out who your friends are when you're down. You never find out who your friends are when you're on the top, because you've got loads of them. People you couldn't even name their names.
After Spartacus, you travelled to Dublin for a British title fight with Brian Magee. I was going to say why Dublin, but it was on the bill with Kiko Martinez and Bernard Dunn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How did you feel going over there to fight Brian Magee?
There was always talk, because we was both under Frank Maloney, if I remember rightly. There was always talk with me and Brian Magee, and Frank a couple of times had threatened me with a fight with Brian Magee, and I said, Frank, I'll beat up heavyweights. I am not worried about it. I always used to say that, and so did my uncle Frank. Always used to say that to Frank. And the deal was, when I signed to fight Spartacus, because I think I was mandatory to fight Oboh, and when he pulled out, then obviously I then had to fight the next ranked challenger. Well, that was Brian Magee. So when I fought Spartacus, part of the agreement was my first defence had to be against my mandatory, which was Brian Magee. And they won like the purse bids. To go to Ireland, to fight an Irishman in Ireland and get a draw, that tells you I won.
Well, I mean, the reports say something similar, but it's the same but different. Apparently, according to reports, Magee thought he'd won, and a lot of the Irish thought he'd won, and a lot of ringsiders thought he'd won. On reflection, do you think that you won?
Yeah, I do, yeah. Yeah, very comfortably. At no stage, you've got to bear in mind, I had Johnny Eames and Jimmy Tibbs in my corner. Now, between them, you've got a hell of a lot of knowledge. There was no panic in my corner at all. Bearing in mind, we knew we was fighting away from home as well.
How good was Brian?
Yeah, very good technically. Not particularly powerful, no, not powerful, but technically very good.
And then came Haymer again.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of the wanting to get revenge, isn't it? You know,
you wanted to avenge the loss.
Yeah,
but you wanted to prove that you should have won in the first place.
Yeah, I did. And if you watched the fight, you could see my intention was to stop him from the off.
It did say after the Haymer fight that you wanted the European. Thomas Ulrich was the champ. Was that ever close?
I think so. The thing with looking back at it now with Frank, I think he loved it where he used to be able to just put me on at the Mountbatten Centre and I'd sell it out and it was good money for him. I'm not slating him because I think Frank Maloney done a good job with me. But what I'm saying is I think it was comfortable. Do you know what I mean?
It was an easy win for him.
Yeah, easy win for him. All the tickets and the money side of it and everything. You're guaranteed, because I was always very popular. I could always sell a ticket, you know. But I would have loved to have fought Ulrich. Yeah, of course. Again, he was, from what I can gather, he was quite a hit and run, scrappy boxer, if I remember rightly. I think actually, didn't Barney fight him?
I think
and
so,
they think he was on the wrong
wrong end of a bad decision out there.
Yeah, he deserved to win.
You lost the title in a real epic with Dean Francis, your British title against his Commonwealth title.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I covered that one for Boxing News. It was one of the best British title fights I've ever seen. Did you know Dean before going into that fight?
With Dean, yeah, my mate boxed him as an amateur, Nigel Philpott. I think he actually stopped Dean as an amateur. And obviously Dean was from Basingstoke, Portsmouth, not too far. And obviously I knew him because I think before that, didn't he knock out Oval Mackenzie? Right. Before that, yeah. So I always knew. I actually watched the fight when he popped his right. I think it was his right shoulder out. I remember, and so I knew of Dean. Obviously, when he won the Commonwealth title, I knew it was gonna happen. But again, I thought my fitness and my toughness would come through. But God bless him, obviously, now he's passed. I actually spoke to him about 5 days before he actually passed away, and that on the telephone. And look how good was he with one arm. Imagine what he was like with two arms. Do you know, and I say that, and I'm totally honest with it. I thought about 3 or 4 different occasions during that fight, he was gone. And he was gone. If you watch the tapes, he was gone. Right? Somehow, some way, he kept clinching on. And that left hook come out of nowhere. In fact, I think we both went in for a left hook. He's connected. Mine was only powder puff compared to his. So, and it caught me and went down, got up. My head wasn't too bad. If I'm totally honest, my head wasn't too bad. Looking back at the tape, he's come in, we're both trying to throw, and then Richie Davis, you know, he finished the fight, waved it off. On the night, I was a bit cheesed off, right? Because of how, in my head, I was in such a lead. I thought I'd won most of the rounds. And that, looking back at it now, knowing what type of power he carried, do I think Richie Davis done the right thing? Yeah, I do. When I see him later on, shook his hand, bought him a drink.
Was that your toughest fight, the Francis one?
I don't know. See, because of my style, I was in a fair
few ding dongs.
Yeah, I don't think it was. It was tough in terms of endurance and fitness, but actually up until the point of me getting knocked out, I think I was too much in control for it to have been like Chris Davis was like that. It was up and down, up and down. Do you know what I mean? But his power that he had, and you know, you just got to take your hat off to him to pull that out.
I spoke to both of you guys after that fight. I think I phoned you over the weekend. You told me it was your fault for taking your foot off the gas.
Yeah, I took a breather in the 8th round because every time I went back to the corner, they kept telling me he's going, because he did look like he was going. Now that ain't normal sort of the advice that I used to get, because I was always, my foot was on the gas anyway, right? But I needed to take a breather because I knew through my experience I had 10, 11 and 12 to go.
You had to wait for your second win.
Yeah, so I did, and I swear to God, I was, that 9th round, I was fine. He just caught me with his left hook and I never caught him with mine. And I was hoping, I was promised on the night that we would have an immediate rematch. I was later told that Frank Warren, who was his manager or was something to do with Chris Senegal or something like that, he actually refused it, and he sort of swayed away from Dean because he was favouring Nathan Cleverly at the time.
Well, you wound up with Cleverly in your next fight for the Commonwealth title up in Everton.
Nathan Cleverly went on to be a 2-time world champion, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say that at any stage of my career, I could beat Nathan Cleverly. I'm not going to say that because I wouldn't disrespect him, 2-time world champion. But Dean Plough, God bless him, he knew what he was doing. He rung me up and gave me 3.5 weeks notice. You can ask John Eames if I'm lying. And I said to John, because I got up for Kyarston, then you've got to bear in mind I was a lot younger. But because I got up so quick for Kyarston, I said, Joe, I think I could get up. And bear in mind, Nathan Cleverly wasn't really proven at the time. And I just thought, no.
Yeah, you were his step up fight, weren't you?
And I thought I'd be able to do it. But you don't realise Father Time's kicking on. And it just, to try and get ready, and that is no word of a lie, to get ready for a 12-round fight with a young spring chicken like Nathan Cleverly and go the way it did, because up until the middle points it was level, and then it just, I think he pulled away the second half of the fight because I was blowing. Yeah,
Johnny Eames said afterwards that you shouldn't have taken that one.
No, and if I'm honest, it was him that talked me into it. But again, because I trusted his judgment, which I still trust his judgment.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't regret it.
Well, sometimes you got to try these things to find out.
Yeah, because
speculate to accumulate.
Well, we was going to get frozen out. They weren't going to give me the rematch with Francis because I believe they thought I would beat Francis in a rematch, and then so he obviously relinquished the Commonwealth title for Nathan Cleverly to fight, who's the new thingy, which he is. I get on really well with Nathan's dad, Vince. He's, you know, I've got nothing bad to say about Nathan. I'm glad to be able to say I shared the ring with him. But what I'm saying is there was a little bit of thing behind that. Only giving me 3.5 weeks notice. That's a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow, that one. You
came back and won Prize Fighter. With wins over Billy Boyle, Courtney Fry and Darren Stubbs. And then you said, not too bad for an old man.
No. For one night, and I mean this, for one night, that was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Because to win a fight on TV, in front of all the fans, forget about the money, because it ain't never about money. It was never about money for me. to do that 3 times in a couple of hours was a night I will never forget. It was brilliant. It was fantastic.
Interesting. Okay. You then beat Sean Davies. What were your ambitions by this point?
Just wanted a rematch with Cleverly, put it to bed, and then I knew I was going to walk away.
Cleverly, well, 2 more fights, and then there were 2 losses. Danny McIntosh was first up. It was a fight we talked about earlier that I covered in Stoke. And that was a question of you rising too late to beat the count from what I wrote at the time.
Yeah, do you know, I remember it as clear as day. See the first knockdown, it was a knockdown. I got hit on top of the head and it was a knockdown. The second one wasn't, but he kept hitting me on the back of the head. I've become friends with Danny. We talk on the phone. We've talked on Messenger and things like that. And he was hitting me on the back of the head. So I was on one knee. And the ref's counting, Victor Lachlan, right? And I kid you not, the first one was a genuine knockdown. It really was. But the second one wasn't. And I'm listening. And then someone shouted at me out of the ring. I think it was actually Ricky Hatton, if I'm honest. Right? He shouted at me. He said something. So I've looked at him. I've looked back. He went 8. So I jumped up. I was fine. And then he waved it off. At that moment, I knew my career was over. I knew that I was going to call it a day because I had too many other things going on at home. So at that point, I knew that my career was over.
Well, Matt Christie of Boxing News he covered your last fight, which was the loss to Michael Bambula, who was an awkward danger man who'd hit a bit of form. He then drew with Tony Jeffries in his next fight. It wasn't a nice way to go out, losing at home.
Again, it was matchmaking. Well, everyone, I'm not going to fault whoever it is because it was all part of my team. It was part of my decision. But why would you get me someone that runs? I used to hate people that run away from a fight.
For your farewell fight as well.
Fight, if you get someone to come and have a barnstormer with me, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But it's hindsight now. It's.
And that was it. So you were saying goodbye to the sport.
Yeah, goodbye to fighting. Yeah, definitely. I had to walk away. I was having a baby at the time. A couple of months later, I thought it was time because you've got to be honest with yourself. 30 plus, what was I, 33? Your best years are behind you. It is a young man's sport.
For your type of fighting as well.
Especially my type of fighting, because it takes years off you.
37 fights, were you satisfied?
I'd done everything the hard way. I generally did that, and I never got no favours. I never had anything in Tony Oakey's career the easy way, never. So if I'd had a bit more luck, then maybe I might have gone on and done a bit more, I don't know. But no, I'm happy with what went on. And that's why I never talked about coming back after that happened, What did you miss the most? Did you miss the thrill of fight night or the routine of being in camp? The fighting side of it for me, I used to love the fighting. Not as a thug, I just loved the buzz. The combat. I did, 100%. I'd have been a gladiator if I was born centuries ago or something like that, because I love that. It's hard to sort of live without it. I've suffered a little bit, nowhere near as much as some of the others, but I think that's because I admitted to it. I knew that you got there.
Feeling quite right.
Yeah, it's gone. Every little bit of aspects of your life, your age, your performances. You've got to be honest. Because it's not an easy game.
What did you do for work straight away after?
When I bought a cab, used to in my local area. And to be fair, if I'm honest, the people at Lee Park from the cab, I only had a couple of incidents with young boys a little bit half drunk and that being a bit chirpy and things like that. But other than that, everyone used to love it, me in the cab. And that it was all right. It wasn't a bad job. And it used to just tie me over.
Did you find it easy to adopt to that? Because I've spoken to Wayne Elcock, your buddy, who worked for BT, and he would fight on a Saturday night or Friday night, and then he'd be out working with customers on a Monday, and he'd be fine because he liked to talk to the customers.
Loves to talk,
but
mate.
Some people find it quite sobering and a bit of a come down where they've been fighting on TV and then they've got a job in the real world.
But it is real, isn't it? Life's real. People see it on TV and they come up with these magic sums. There's this fake world that apparently you're living in. It's not real, is it?
You and Wayne Elcock did have a fight.
We had one for Indy Rose Trust, which he turned around and said to me, they was looking for someone for me, and he rang me out and he went, well, I'm not going to let you get in the ring without me, am I? So we done one for Johnny Ings, I know he'd knock lumps out of me and I'll knock lumps out of him, but I wouldn't want to hurt him and he wouldn't want to hurt me. And listen, we're not no young spring chickens and we're doing it for charity. So we did, and we knocked lumps out of each other and it was very entertaining.
And then what about the Jeff Lacy fight? And how come the competitive juices still flowing? Is this why you still fought and got involved with Wayne and with Lacy?
The Jeff Lacy one come about because I was a fan of Joe Calzaghe. Always have been. I think he's the most underappreciated British boxer we've had. I really do. Look what the man done. Look who he beat. Look where he went. Matt Crouch put something up on Facebook, and I see it that Jeff Lacy was coming over, and they was looking for someone for him to fight. I just popped my name up. Well, obviously Matt Crouch was really good friends with Dean Francis, and so he knew that I could have a fight, and it just come about, and I ended up having 2 fights with him in the end.
So what happened with fight one?
Fight one, a typical case. I knew what I was up against. I knew he could punch, and I was never scared of anyone, but I was weary of him. I went up to Scotland twice and sparred Stephen Simmons. A couple of weeks later, went up and sparred him again, so I took it all proper serious, proper pro. It was a fight over 10 threes, all proper. Robin Reed was referee, and all that lot, so it was all good. At the fight, because I didn't want to get involved with him, bang, and I knew what Joe Calzaghe done with him. Bang, 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 bang. Frustrated him, beat him every round because it was Robin Reed that scored it. I beat him every round easy. Went to the scorecards because he had an injury, and I'd won every round. Simple. The story of the second fight, 2 years later, I felt that I owed him
a rematch,
and he kept on about it. He kept on about it, but in them 2 years, I'd had a baby and all this, that and the other, settled proper down. Whereas he hadn't, he'd been away training like a lunatic. So anyway, he got hold of Matt Crouch when Matt Crouch was out on holiday. I want a rematch with Tony, and he rang me out and he said, do you want a rematch? And I thought, and I'll be honest, I thought, when you want about doing it? He went December. I thought, lovely. Bit of Christmas money for the kids. So I've got 6 kids. That ain't cheap, right? So I thought, yeah, we'll do that. But the difference being this time, because I generally beat him so easy the first time, and I did, I underestimated him. You cannot underestimate someone, because the last thing that a boxer loses is his punch. And we boxed him again. If you watch it, it actually looked like I was pissing the first round. I was winning it easy. I got caught at the end of that first round, and my head was gone. And then I never recovered. Whereas the first fight, he must have caught me, because you don't become a champion the way he was, and not caught me. He must have caught me, but it bounced off me. I think age caught up with me a bit, and I never recovered. And then in the second round, I got caught again, and I went down. And that made me realise, you know what, Tony, you're too old.
So, Tony, I've got some questions from our guys on Patreon, if I can put them to you. Liam Tyra asks, can you ask Tony how he thinks he would do against the current light heavyweights? And did you ever consider moving down in weight to maybe being a big super middle?
Yeah, as I said to you earlier, that was Ronnie Davis's decision. He wanted me to stay at light heavy. I did contemplate going down to super middle. If I remember rightly, once Frank Warren offered me to fight Jeff Lacy when he fought at Cardiff Arms Park or the Castle or something. Years, we met him out in Portugal, me, him, Frank Maloney and my uncle Frank Hopkins. It was tempting to go down to super middle, but I felt so comfortable at light heavy, that's why I stayed there. As regards against the current light heavyweights.
So you're looking at Kovalev, you're looking at Yard and Buatsi in the UK.
Yeah, who do you think with Buatsi and Yardy?
It's a good fight, isn't it? It's a good fight.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And then Callum Johnson as well.
Yeah, I was going to say,
you and Callum Johnson would be a good.
I sparred Callum when he very first turned over. He come to the TKO, and I sparred him. Nice boy he is, good left hook. And that, it's hard to say. In my prime, I truly believe that I could have held my own with anyone. And that's, I'm not saying that in a big-headed way, I'm not. I'm saying that I had the mental toughness and the determination I would hold my own with anyone.
Dewey Powell asked, what was it like defending the British title in Dublin? I can't recall another time it happened.
Well, British title in not a British, no, it was, but it was brilliant night. Another one for the memories. It was, the atmosphere wasn't a Tony Oakey atmosphere. Obviously, it was an Irish atmosphere, but again, it was a great experience. It was a brilliant night before, during, and especially after.
Edward Sturzaker asks, Tony had so many great nights in front of your own fans. Which one was your favourite, and do you feel you reached your full potential in the sport? Ronnie
Davis disagrees. He said he thinks I could have gone on and done more. I look at it as I won everything other than a European, and I'm happy with that.
Jamie Ingleby, your thoughts on Dean Francis, and in particular, was he the best that you fought?
I boxed him with one arm. This is only how simple I can put it. I boxed him with one really good arm, and I still had an absolute barnstormer. And I know for a fact, with all the years of sparring Howard Eastman, and I knew I was world class. I knew 100% I was world class, and all the boys that I'd sparred up the TKO. How good would Dean Francis would have been with two good arms? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, yeah, I do. I do think he was brilliant, and I don't think that because of what happened with his shoulder, you actually got to see the best of him.
Craig Brookfield asks, how difficult was it to adjust from fighting in British and Commonwealth title fights to the prize fighter format?
It was a little bit different. I was quite lucky. I had Joe Dunbar working with me. You must know him. He's sports science. He's brilliant. You know, he done Lennox Lewis.
That would have been through Frank.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and
Maloney.
It was.
There's so many Franks that you got to keep saying.
Yeah, no, I know. My son's name's Franklin, and yeah, no. We had him in our helping us out and that. So, and he was doing it with his clicker and his punch counter and all that lot. And it was a bit different, but the same breath, if you do all 3 fights, it's still 9 rounds. So you still got to make sure you put the rounds in, but at the same time, you've got to put the sprints in. My ethics were thinking, don't think about the second fight, because if you don't win the first fight, you're not going to go to the second fight. So put in all what you can. If you're fit enough and you've trained hard enough and you've done your sprints and you've done your recovery training, then you will completely, recharge yourself and you'll be good to go again in another half an hour.
You said earlier in our chat about blowing bubbles and all the rest of it, which obviously is a thing about punch drunk and all the rest of it. Do you have any concerns about your health down the line? Because you were in some terrific slugfests.
Everyone do, and the older you get, you do. You get paranoid over that, but I don't slur. My memory's brilliant. So I don't think I worry any more than yourself. I would say that people around me worry more than myself, if I'm honest. Like my mum, my brothers, especially my older brother, he's like my dad. He brought me up and he loves me to death. So he's been a little bit worried, but I've got a great memory. I don't slur. I'm as sharp as a button. Well, I think I am. And that, so...
No less sharp than when you started.
Yeah, so I'm hoping I'm all right, touch wood.
Do you want your kids to box?
No. And the only reason why I say that, because my youngest is showing so many signs of being a little bit of a little toughie. And like I explained to the wife, if he does box, it's odds on he's got his dad's blood running through his veins, so he's going to be pretty good. He's going to have his dad training him, which again means he can be pretty good. But then that means he's going to maybe go on to be a good amateur and then want to go professional. And as though I've had some of my best memories in life, other than my kids being born, is through boxing. You also have to go through a hell of a lot. Like the punishment I took in the sparring Howard Eastman for so many rounds, over and over and over again in my fights. As a parent, I think you would worry. Yes, I would love for him to go boxing as an amateur, because I think it teaches you respect, it teaches you self-discipline, it teaches you how to look after yourself, But I don't know whether I would want him to become a professional. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
It's been a great journey. It's been a real mixed bag, isn't it? Some real highs and some real bad lows.
Yeah, but I think that's life. I've took it all in my stride. It's all about learning. Life's all about learning. And it's been brilliant. People say, well, would I change a lot? You could say yes, but then in the same breath, I know, because my wife tells me and my life shows, I've turned out to be a nice bloke. So would I change anything? I don't think I would. It's been a hell of a ride. I've had some fantastic memories. I've been on holiday all around the world thanks to boxing. So it's been really, really, really good.
Brilliant. Happy to leave it there. Thank you very much for having me over. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.